Hello, this is Linda Como, and we are now recording conversations about our conference coming up, the North American Systemic Constellations Conference in Virginia Beach this year, October 5th to 8th. And today I have with me the lovely Suzi Tucker from New York City. And Suzi is doing a workshop at the pre-conference on October 5th, Thursday, from 9 to 5, Foundations of Breath. Thank you, Suzi, for taking time out of your busy life to come and meet with us today.
My great pleasure.
Great, looking forward to this. So tell us a little bit about how you might describe constellations at a cocktail party. My favorite question.
Just sort of, it's my favorite question too, and over the years I've probably answered it 1,000 different ways. I still haven't gotten to something very succinct. So what I've settled on, in a way, is an answer that tries to invoke something, because I think that's what constellations are. And so many times I have just said a word in a long sentence, and the person listening to me has reflected back a complete understanding, far more than I gave. And I realized, oh, that's because it's a little like poetry, where we actually understand what's beneath the vocabulary. I might describe constellations in a similar way, that it is both a kind of philosophical view, a process, a therapeutic approach, meaning that it's not a strategy for therapy, but that it is certainly therapeutic in really fundamental ways. It is a gathering of intelligence that is guided by a facilitator toward the more. And the more is something that Bert Hellinger used a long time ago. He described the idea of making decisions always that went to the more, to more life. And I hold that close because I think that really is the question that every person comes in with. They may call it divorce, they may call it depression, they may call it stuckness, but what they're really saying is, how do I go toward more? So I think the philosophical view that looks at how life goes on biologically, through culture, literature, language, and the process that allows people to experience insight. These things together create something we're calling constellations. Wow. We look toward the original constellation, and then we do a little time travel and begin to envision what the future constellation could look like.
Awesome. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I love hearing all these different interpretations. Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about Foundations of Breath, your workshop.
So my workshop, first of all, it kind of reflects that I've been in this work a very long time.
Yes.
And that I started out with Bert as an editor. And I worked with him on language. So breath is spelled B-R-E-A. with a D in parentheses, T-H. So I've worked with him long enough that over time, even as his work has changed and more sort of emissaries have gone out into the world and come back with greatly embroidered work, I guess I would say, the foundations of the work still hold. So the original observations about belonging, I think that's really the primary one, that we need to belong, that we will do anything to belong. And as we carry that out into our professions and our marriages and into the world, we see that it has a very profound effect on the choices we make. Do we need to belong to a small circle? Can we belong to a large circle? What does that take? So within that is the principle of inclusion and exclusion. Orders, of course, they're just simply that life flows forward. And if we, as the children, could take this idea that our only job was to go deeper into our life, what a life-altering thing that would be. Who belongs in the original family? I think that's probably, for me, the least, or let me say the most elastic, as more and more people in my constellations have come into that kind of original constellations in places of importance. So these ideas, along with the ideas of, for instance, basic respect for the client, meaning that when I work with a client, I see the client as the guide all the way through. I always say sometimes I move pretty quickly. I've learned to be pretty light on my feet, and I notice a lot of things. I think my ADD serves me in this work. I don't hold on to what I don't need, and I can be pretty present. But the client is always in the lead. So it is really, it makes me it gives me a good barometer, because when I am foisting something on the client, I know it. I get weak immediately. So I consider this respect for the client a fundamental principle. I alluded to earlier this idea of observations, that Bert Hellinger used this word observation very particularly. I think this is also a fundamental idea. If I move into something else, then I am moving into beliefs. All I'm really trying to do is report my observations. And that ability to report, that ability to have a voice, is not contingent upon somebody loving me for it, not contingent upon that person even accepting my reporting, right? So this idea of observation feels very important to me. So the workshop moves around this geography, with the sense that it is by doing that that we can move out of that geography. So some of my constellations, if I look back at them or I recorded them, look pretty creative. They look pretty interesting, right? You know, they're things that I would not have thought in my head, oh, I think I'll do this, right? But these sort of fundamental principles let me be present enough to move beyond the parameters that were set by other people. Even my last constellation, which might have been an hour before, and to stay anchored, to stay grounded, and to stay in the common field, right? Without rising up or maybe going down to places where, again, I have to somehow squeeze that person into my view. That's ego-driven, that's fear-driven. So I think mobility and the fundamental ideas are intimately connected.
This is fascinating, because really what you've described is an excellent opportunity for someone completely new to constellations to attend, as well as those of us that have been around a little while, to deepen our practice by getting back to fundamentals and observations. Now, you mentioned something when we were chatting before I started recording, and that was the concept of the possibility of these fundamentals, the original observations of Bert Hellinger, of constellations. Having these fundamentals allows for the opportunity for creativity. Could you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the idea that we talk about in this work about honoring the ancestors, honoring mother and father, honoring our teachers. Honoring is a word that we use all the time. I think it's a really important word if we take it very seriously. It is a verb. It is a verb. So that sense that I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors or of my teachers or of my parents is exactly what allows me to move out of the confines of their particular lives, right? So one of the things Hellinger taught me early on, not in a formal way, but in a conversational way, the thing that he said over and over to me from different directions was, go forth, bring your whole self. And I think over time, my sense that my whole self is exactly what made people feel safe. And my whole self now includes, as part of its nucleus, these fundamental observations. However, I always make this joke, so I'm going to just make it one more time. Maybe this is the last time I'll ever make this joke. That when I realized I didn't have to be an old German man to do this work, I was free.
Lovely.
I was free. And I'm not good at being him. And he's very good at being him. And I am far better at being me. So creativity for me, and it's idiosyncratic, right? Somebody else, it's something else. I am interested in literature. I'm interested in dance. I'm interested in music. I am interested in art. Those things for me are the way that cultures get carried on, that people find each other above and below their differences. So my sense of a constellation and doing a painting, for instance, are very similar. They are very, very similar. Even my sense of writing is very similar. Sometimes people say, oh, that's so beautifully written. You understand this so well. And I always say that's actually the opposite is true. I sit blankly. I have not a thought in my head sometimes. And then I write, and then I read, and then I understand it. So a constellation works the same way.
Yes. Absence of self as a constellator is critical. Yeah.
And that's an absence of self it's a paradoxical notion, right? Because and I don't always achieve it, by the way. Sometimes I'm hungry, sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I forgot to check in and I really dislike this person and I have to remember what that says about me and not that person. And so sometimes I slip. But when I don't, and that's most of the time at this point, I can be completely present. I know what that means now. I don't think I used to know what that meant. I think I paid lip service to it, but I don't think I knew what it meant.
Wow, this is going to be one heck of a workshop, Suzi. Wow, it's so cool that you also get a whole day.
I know. I love it. I love it, and that's kind of for me. It's it's sort of a natural rhythm for me. That whole day. And I usually am pretty good at knowing when the day is over, but I don't like checking. I don't like checking.
Okay, well, excellent. Well, thank you very much for that talk. I do have one more question if you have another minute. Why do you think people should come to the conference? What advantages or benefits do you imagine they would attain?
Okay, so that I will try to keep it short. I think for people who are interested in constellations in a very active way or in a very abstract way, it is a way to really, I'm going to use the word, honor that interest. There is something about, and to tell you the truth, it is this year that I really understand it myself. There's something about taking one's place in a chorus, if you will, that allows you to know, first of all, that chorus would be missing your voice if your voice weren't there. And that it is like walking into a new territory where if I'm open And I just let myself hear in the most free-form way that the gifts I will get are not predictable. And that seems to me a very rare thing in the world. So even myself, I will go this year with the idea that I don't know who will be my new mentors. I don't know how my intelligence will be expanded by somebody's very different view, right? And I think the whole conference is like a gigantic constellation.
Yes.
Where we get to imagine ourselves taking a place in the larger circle.
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. Trusting your instincts to come too.
That's right. And trusting yourself. Really, I think it's really a self-trust in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can be open. That's different than being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I can know more. How exciting is that?
Yeah. It's a real gift.
It's a real gift. I can leave some things behind.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay too.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I really appreciate it. I look forward to meeting you in person.
It was such a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for your lovely questions.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure, Suzi. So Suzi's workshop again is October 5th at the pre-conference, 9 to 5, Foundations of Breadth. And we'll see you again. Don't forget to check our website, NASC, Constellations.org. Thank you very much for your time today. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzi.
Take good care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Off you go.
Okay.